can try and win championships, and that's what it's all about. When you look from the outside and you watch this team, I know we're going to have a real good, solid hockey team this year.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined right here by my co-host, Eric Wilson. Today, we're going over another potential trade, doing a little bit more of that speculation, taking a look at some of these rumors being thrown out there, and these potential mock trades from guys like New York Rangers Discussion on Instagram, and of course, Bleacher Report. Everybody's talking about the trade deadline, so we want to get involved, discuss, and react to some of these mock trades. And today, we're going to be talking about a defenseman that we think could pair really nicely on the New York Rangers defensive lines. We think that this guy could have a really solid impact, but we want to go ahead and discuss him. But before we do that, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. There was no Rangers hockey yesterday, so I got to celebrate the anniversary of the boys, winning the Super Bowl. I'm just kidding. Rangers back tonight against Vancouver. It's going to be a big game. We have a couple hard matchups coming up against teams like Seattle and Carolina, so it's pretty important that we win against Vancouver, who's not that good. But what would help us win? A new defensive player.
Yes, a new defensive player would help the New York Rangers win some more games. Now, this is coming from Bleacher Report. The player that we're discussing today, Eric, is Olli Määttä from the Red Wings. And here's what Bleacher Report had to say. Pound for pound, the Rangers' biggest need is a left defenseman. To keep it short, veteran Ben Harpur and former top prospect Libor Hajek are not NHL caliber. That's Bleacher Report's words, not mine, not Eric's, okay? Just got to clarify that. Head coach Gerard Gallant desperately needs a veteran shutdown defenseman to plug next to a 21-year-old Braden Schneider on the third pairing. And they suggest that there are values among them is Olli Määttä from the Detroit Red Wings, and they think that he would be a massive upgrade at that position next to Schneider. So, Eric, right off the bat, what are your thoughts on this player? What do you think that he could contribute? And do you agree with the fact that, or the idea that is the Rangers' biggest need on their entire team right now?
I mean, I would say that another winger for the top six is a little bit more dire, but I do agree that we might be in need of another defenseman. And Ben Harpur, he's not been bad. He's been decent, but I definitely think that Olli Määttä contributes a little bit more, or would contribute a little bit more to the team. As Bleacher Report said, he is a shutdown defenseman, and our defensive core is filled with a lot of offensive defensemen who like to take it up the ice a lot, like Keandre Miller, like Adam Fox. So we need more guys who are just solid defensively overall, especially at this point of the season. We're going to start needing to rest Igor a little bit more, going to play Halak some more. And Halak has improved his game substantially. He's looked really good, and he's been winning games. But at the same time, his goals against average hasn't been the greatest. We just picked up that win against Calgary, but he still let in 4 goals. So adding another defensive defenseman onto our roster could hopefully reduce that by a couple of goals right there. So I think he could contribute a lot. Harper's been solid, but there's definitely room for improvement if you want to make it far in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the Rangers are arguing as well, or Bleacher Report is arguing for the Rangers as well. Another excerpt that they have on Olli Määttä, he's battled injuries for much of his career, but the Finnish defenseman is one of the better shutdown defensemen in the league, as Eric just mentioned. He's 6'2", 207 pounds, a strong penalty killer, and he doesn't take penalties. Määttä won't provide much offense, but he can make a good first pass out of the zone. And they continued onward, saying he has also played in 85 career playoff games and won back-to-back Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh. If he stays healthy, Bleacher Report believes he's a perfect match for Schneider on the third pairing. So, Eric, that's the next thing that I want to discuss right there. Played in 85 career playoff games, won back-to-back Stanley Cups. How important is that playoff experience, and how much do you value that when you're looking at potential players that the Rangers could trade for in terms of defensemen out there on the open market? Why do you maybe value Olli Määttä more because of his playoff experience, or is that just something that's like a nice benefit?
I mean, it is a nice benefit, but it's actually pretty important. I think definitely hockey is the sport where playoff experience matters the most, in my opinion, because you look at just regular season NHL compared to the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's an entirely different game. It's more fast-paced, it's more aggressive, and a lot of young players just aren't ready for that. And that's kind of what we saw with the Rangers throughout the last couple seasons, where we weren't making it far in the playoffs because we had a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds who weren't prepared for that experience. But now that we have a team who has a lot more playoff experience, making it as far as we did last season, adding on another defenseman who has won back-to-back Stanley Cups in the past. He knows what it takes to win a Stanley Cup, and that's extremely important. Like, you can't really ignore that fact. So I think it's like pretty key compared to Ben Harper, who hasn't really done much in his career that wise.
Right, hasn't done much in his career that way, and we know that Olli Määttä has. Now, let's take a look at some of the stats for Mata's career. This season, he's got 45 games played, 4 goals, 11 assists, and 15 points. Throughout his career, 579 games played, 34 goals, 117 assists, 151 total points. And again, we mentioned that he's not really someone who's going to provide you many points or do much for you offensively, but he's a really solid defenseman. Like, he can play some really solid defense, kill the penalties, and do everything that you want on that end. Really big guy, 6'2", 207 pounds, strong player. And let's talk about his contract, though, Eric, because we've talked about what we think he could provide to this team, especially with that playoff experience. But on his contract right now, he's currently on a 1-year, $2.25 million deal. So he'll be a free agent at the end of the season. Now, Eric, we talked about this in yesterday's episode as well. And we've really had this discussion quite a number of times about potential trade targets. Are we looking for a rental? Now, Olli Määttä would likely be a rental unless the Rangers went out there in free agency this offseason and tried to extend him. But considering he's a 1-year deal, as things stand, this would be a 1-year rental, a half-a-year rental. Are you okay with that idea, Eric? Or do you want the Rangers maybe to go find someone that they can keep around more long-term?
I mean, in this specific trade discussion, I am okay with it. Yesterday when we were discussing Vladimir Tarasenko, we were a little nervous about it because of the amount that we would have to give for him. But when you look at a guy like Olli Määttä, like the Bleacher Report article said, like a mock trade would only be like a 3rd round draft pick. So it's like, yeah, we're going to have to give up a little bit of draft capital there to get him, but it's not like we're going to lose anyone too crazy. And his cap hit is only $2.25 million for this season. So he ain't cheap, but we're not going out of our way to get a guy like Patrick Kane, who we'll get into that in a couple of days, would cost us a lot more. So for a rental, which is most likely going to happen in this circumstance, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine considering you're not sacrificing too much draft capital and you're also not overpaying him by any means, right? We're talking about a 3rd round pick rather than in yesterday's episode, we were talking about a 2nd round, potentially 1st round pick if the Rangers make it to the finals in that mock trade. So I think when you look at this mock trade in particular, Detroit Red Wings trade Olli Määttä in return for a 2023 3rd round pick from the New York Rangers. That makes sense to me. I think it's worth it to sacrifice that 3rd round pick. Get this defenseman to pair alongside Schneider, who you could probably help your team really push a lot deeper into the postseason because we know that defensive depth is kind of the issue here for the New York New York Rangers team. But Eric, when we look at how he might fit into this team, and let's go over this first. The needs, right? Because we've talked about top 6 wingers, and now we're talking about a defenseman to pair alongside Schneider because we believe that's probably where Määttä would end up playing on the lines. But which one of those do you think is more important for the Rangers to address this trade deadline? A top 6 winger or a defensive defenseman?
I would definitely say at this point of the season, the winger. If you would have asked me like earlier or last season, I definitely would have said defenseman. But you look at our top 6 core right now, they are like the most consistently inconsistent 6 players in like the entire league right now. They keep going on hot streaks and they cool off. And who knows what it's going to look like when the playoffs come around, because you're going to need to score goals in the playoffs if you want to win the Stanley Cup. So I think just adding a solid player that will really just keep that top 6 consistently scoring goals is pretty much essential, because you look at our defensive core, like as we've mentioned a couple of times this episode, Harper has been good. We're just looking to improve it right now. It's not like he's going out there and causing too many problems on the ice. But with the price of Olli Määttä, I think it is possible to do both. You're going to have to give up a decent amount for a top 6 winger, but you're not going to, you can still just get rid of that 3rd round pick for Olli Määttä. So I think it is possible to acquire both. I wouldn't just prioritize one over the other. I would just actively be working on acquiring one of each.
I think that's the best way to do it. Try to acquire one of each. But I think that if the Rangers aren't able to pull off anything blockbuster, anything big for a top 6 winger, I think that pivoting and taking a look at a guy like Olli Määttä and just shoring up their defense makes a lot of sense, just to kind of solidify the foundation of this team And we've mentioned it a couple times, but Eric, I want to get your take on it. Where do you think he fits on these defensive lines? Bleacher Report says he pairs on the left side alongside Schneider. I think that's a good fit. But what is your opinion on that? Is that where you would place him on these lines?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if we were to acquire a defenseman, that is pretty much the only open spot on this roster right now. Lindgren and Fox are incredible. They're a lock. Same thing with Miller and Trouba. You're not really going to see any of those 4 players be moved around for like the next couple of years, really. So it's really just Harper, because Schneider is like a good, young, quick defenseman. And the only thing he's really lacking is a solid defensive defenseman to be paired up next to him. And, as you mentioned earlier, he's a great penalty killer, which is something that the Rangers need to work on a little bit right now. He doesn't take penalties, which is helpful because a lot of our defensemen are out there, Jacob Trouba, making bad penalties. Even though Trouba's been better. I like Trouba again now. But yeah, I think that's something that we just can't overlook. Even though he's not the biggest point scorer, he contributes a lot onto the ice that we don't really see from a lot of the defensemen on the team. So I think putting him right next to Schneider is the only possible and best option.
I agree with you. And I think when you look at that third defensive pairing, Harper is absolutely the weak link when you look at all 6 of those guys. And that defensive pairing needs some help. And we've seen a few players play alongside Schneider this season. That's kind of been a revolving door for the Rangers, as that left defenseman on that third defensive pairing. So this would be the perfect way to shore that up. And I think that when you look at that, those 6, if you had Olli Määttä thrown in there, that's, I mean, how much better could that be? Like, that is a really strong core of 6 defensemen up there with the rest of any team in the NHL. So if this move were to happen, especially considering the somewhat low cost of it with a 3rd round pick, I would be over the moon. I think this is perfect, exactly what the Rangers need. This gives them a bountiful depth in the defense, and I would love to see this one happen. But we want to know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section, don't we, Eric?
We always do. I love reading.
All right. Of course we do. Eric loves to read and respond to all of your comments down below, so make sure you leave them so that you make Eric happy. You'll make his day, and you'll make my day if you leave a like on this episode, and you'll make both of our days if you subscribe to the channel, and you'll make everybody's day if you ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, because we have plenty of great episodes coming out here on Fireside Rangers. Tomorrow we'll be back at it with another trade rumor, speculation. We're going to go through every single one in these Bleacher Report articles for you guys as we head towards that trade deadline. So make sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.
He shoots. He's